Hello, welcome everybody to Vision Untethered. My name is Jill Simonds, founder and CEO of Savvy Strategic Partners. We are a full service C suite, executing vision, increasing business value, and helping founder owners realize freedom. Welcome to our podcast today, conversations with inspirational visionary leaders, delving into the true meaning of becoming untethered. Too often, business owners find themselves tethered to and held back by their businesses. The business, as a result, is essentially held back because it can't operate independently of the founder. This stifles innovation, expansion, and long-term growth and value. Today, we are thrilled to have Larry Sprung, the founder and wealth advisor at Mitlin Financial, joining us today. Larry is not only a financial expert with a passion for helping families and businesses achieve their financial dreams, but he's an advocate for mental health awareness and community service. With years of experience guiding clients through financial planning, wealth management, and beyond, Larry brings a wealth of knowledge and heart for making a real impact. We're excited to dive into your journey, insights, and the values that drive Mitlin Financial success today. Thank you for being here, Larry.
Thanks for having me, Jill. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, first, starting with passion and purpose, I know that it is a big foundation into what it is that you do and what Mitlin serves clients in. So, curious what passion and purpose brought you to business ownership and specifically within this industry.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of business ownership, I like to say that I was and still am unemployable. I didn't make for a very good employee, so I always knew at some point that I would probably venture off onto some entrepreneurial journey and form my own business company, whatever that may be. So, and how I got here was really a function of one of my main core values, which is family. And growing up, kind of in short, my mom was diagnosed at a very young age with breast cancer, and I
Mm,
watched my dad, struggle with balancing everything he had to do from a standpoint of not only being a full-time educator, but he also had side gigs before they were side gigs. He had his own business, and then he also taught night school, and
wow.
balancing all that, taking care of my mom, taking care of the kids.
Mhm.
And he had no financial advisor at the time. He had nobody to lean on to help guide him. And as I started going on the journey of discerning where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do with my life, I started thinking back to that journey, and not that it would have had any impact on my mom's health or, unfortunately, her passing, about 12 or 13 years later at the age of 47. But I
Mm,
feel like it would have lent him a hand, and he would have had
mhm.
somebody to help guide him and maybe take some of the burden off his shoulders. So as I
Yeah,
started researching careers, I felt like this is something that I would love to be able to be in a position to help people like my dad. But I think just as
yeah,
important, it's also really interesting and fun helping people reach their goals for, joyous things such as, retirement, if that's what they're interested in, or helping their child get through college debt free, or getting
hmm,
married, or buying a second home, what have you. The objects are, in perpetuity. There are so many different ways we can
yeah,
help. The objectives are in perpetuity, the way we can help families. So as I started to learn more, it was somewhere where I wanted to be. And right out of college, I entered the profession, and I've been here ever since. And the
great.
company Mitlin was formed 20 years ago, and we're going to be celebrating our 20th anniversary October of 2024.
Wow, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
20 years. That's incredible. A lot of lives impacted, businesses, business owners through what you do in the last 20 years, I can imagine.
Yes, it's been fantastic, and we're looking forward to
Yeah,
everybody else that we can impact on a go forward basis as well.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing the story and the background. Can you share maybe a personal story of a time throughout this journey you felt held back by this business, by Mitlin, you're, serving in that role, and what steps you took to untether yourself?
Yeah, so I think that any and every business owner ends up at crossroads, and feeling that, feeling of a merger, if you will, right? It's really at the beginning and, very early on. there's a it's hard to delineate the difference between your life personally and your life as the business. They kind of meld and merge into one, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
And over time, as you grow a business, it becomes more and more involved. There's more things to do. There's more events that we have to help families through, and that could really feel like being tethered to the company. And I think
Mm-hmm.
where I worked to untether myself was through educating myself, because I would consider myself a first generation entrepreneur, even though my dad owned a business. He kept it
Mm-hmm.
very small,
Okay.
because that's all he could really do, and that was really what he really looked at it as a side gig. So, I only know what I know, so I had to lean into resources, support those that have been there and done it. And one of the I guess two of the things that I followed very heavily over the last many years have been Gino Wickman and traction and EOS principles, and
Mm-hmm.
Dan
Absolutely.
Sullivan and strategic coach.
Yeah.
And talking about Dan Sullivan, self-managing company, and Gino Wickman, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And
Mm-hmm.
both those gentlemen have really impacted my ability to really understand how to create a self-managing company and how
Mm-hmm.
to, untether. I don't think you can ever fully cut the cord, but at least
Right.
untether yourself enough so that everything that's happening in the business day to day is not reliant upon you.
Absolutely. Yeah, you brought up a couple resources that are near and dear to my heart, especially so with those two individuals and the resources available and systems available to help entrepreneurs. Does your business operate on EOS?
We do. We do. We're
Okay,
probably about 3 to 4
great.
years into utilizing that process, and it's been
Yeah,
extremely helpful to our growth.
absolutely. That's exciting. We can dive more into that too. I'm curious within that and kind of segue into this conversation how you as a business owner create systems and processes that have allowed the business to operate independently of your constant oversight and kind of where some of those tools you just mentioned, especially with EOS, come into play.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I've been, very heavily involved in, and something that I've kind of implemented from the very beginning, was putting into place systems and processes, because,
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult to untether yourself from the business if everything's up here in your head, right? And you're the only one that knows how to do it, or how to get it
Mm-hmm.
done, or the steps to do it. So we've been
Yeah.
very intentional about getting those processes down into systems within our, for instance, our client relationship management system, which is Salesforce. Getting those action plans set up so that if something happens, we fire off the action plan and everybody knows what those steps are, and
Mm-hmm.
creating manuals for those specific tasks that maybe there isn't an action plan for, and documenting it. So those have been very key to, taking myself out of the business and being able to empower others to kind of step in and take care of those things that need to be taken care of for the families we serve. And,
Mm-hmm.
for us, utilizing the EOS system, we have a scorecard where we have 5 key metrics that we evaluate weekly. And that's really my way of seeing, where are we with the business? We had these
Mm-hmm.
goals that we started out with for the year.
Yeah.
We're X number of weeks into the year, and where are we through that? And if there is an issue where we're not on track and we're significantly off track, what's
Mm-hmm.
the underlying issue as to why we are, off track? Or on the flip side, maybe we're super ahead of the game and we underestimated our goals for the year. What's been
Yeah.
leading to that overachievement, and understanding that, not just myself, but also as a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I'm curious because everybody's story and journey into implementing the tools of EOS is different. What can you recall about the initial days of implementing the tools and especially the scorecard now that you've touched on the scorecard, setting on those metrics, any iterations and kind of pain points or learning opportunities along the way that you remember?
Definitely. I mean, we chose to more or less self-implement. I had somebody early on that kind of helped
Okay.
us get set, get started, and kick it
Mm-hmm.
off. And they
Mm-hmm.
were very helpful. And Now we're at a point where it's kind of running itself, which is great. And we've had challenges along the way where, I guess initially we had certain metrics that were on that scorecard, and 6, 8 months in, we were like, you know what? This particular one's not a good metric, and we released it and brought in another
Hmm.
one. So there's some trial and error, and I think now we're at a point where we kind of look at what the goals are of the business, make sure that those metrics that we're tracking for the scorecard are really
Hmm.
giving us a good indication of whether we're on or off track for those metrics. And I think if you understand what it's the meaning behind it, I think it's something that you can easily tweak and amend over time, but it does take some time to figure out and, I guess, quote unquote, get it right. And I
Hmm.
think it's an iterative process. Each year we look at it again and say, okay, are these 5 metrics still the 5 metrics that are good for us?
Hmm.
If not, how do we adjust and change this? And quite frankly, of the 5 metrics, I'm only responsible for reporting one of them. So that
Okay.
means my, 4 other of my stakeholders are taking
Hmm.
care of tracking, reporting on, and discussing, the 4 others. So that helps
Yeah.
me untether to some degree as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And your experience through the journey, what have been some of the biggest mistakes that you can recall and that probably a lot of business owners make becoming overly dependent, their involvement in the business, relying on them for the day-to-day operations?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest one is, making sure that you bring in quality stakeholders, give them a clearly defined role, goals, and objectives, and let them run with it. Don't get in their way.
Hmm.
And most people will be very successful. And I think where a lot of owners get hung up is they still try to do it themselves. And, at the end of the day, it may not be done exactly the way you do it, but if it gets done right and it gets done in the right way for your organization,
Hmm.
that's the only way you're going to be able to untether yourself over time is by having those key members of your team being able
Yeah.
to step in and fill those roles.
Absolutely. Common mistake, right? It usually does come down with to the people and matters of trust and control and really building the team of strength and unique ability outside of yourself. So, what would you say being overly tethered to a business as an owner, or maybe even in instances with the clients you've worked with, families and businesses you've worked with, how has that tethering and that over involvement in the business had an effect on the business's long-term value? Are there any businesses
Oh,
you're working with, in the financial advising and in that realm where you're really getting into the heart of the asset value of the business and the detriment there of the business owner being too tethered and the business heavily dependent?
yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. I think one, it really prohibits growth in terms of, exponential growth of the business itself. In order to have that exponential, it can't rely on one. It has to rely on many to have that exponential growth. And
Mm-hmm.
then from an enterprise value standpoint, whether you're looking to sell your business or not, whether you're looking to exit your business or not, we really instill everybody with this mindset that their thought process should be that I am involved in building this business for an exit, whether that's
Right.
top of mind right now or not. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you take that kind of approach, the way you approach the business and growing it, and really a lot of the decisions, if not all the decisions you make, if it's tied to that kind of ideology, you make very different decisions than if this is just a lifestyle business, for myself and my family. So
Right.
I think it's very important to take that stance that, there's going to be a sale or an exit and build the
Mm-hmm.
business towards that goal. And then the other thing is, from a
Yeah.
standpoint of if everything's reliant upon you, what is really the enterprise value upon a sale if you're not going to be with the business after or post sale? Then there's a lot lost because everything's up here. How
Mm-hmm.
are you going to relay that to the new entity that potentially might own it? So the
Sure.
importance of those processes and systems really help on the exit as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, just to kind of recap, I think it helps in the growth, because if you're not building it that way and it's tethered to you, you're really pulling back on the growth. Two, you got to have that point of view that you're going to sell or exit it. And
Right.
three, from an enterprise value, if you do sell or exit it at some point, you're going to have that knowledge somewhere else. Otherwise, you're going to be forever tied to that business,
Hmm.
and you're not going to get the value that you might want or expect because it's solely tied to you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, hit on a lot of great points. What was your mindset early on? Was this something you learned over time in this industry and with what you do specifically, or did you go into business ownership with this understanding and mindset yourself?
Yeah, I think I would say a lot of it's been learned over time. And in full transparency, my business, as an example, was very much a lifestyle business for a long time, and that was really by design. That was the way I wanted it. I wanted to have the ability to go and watch my kids practice, during the week and school events and travel with them to their hockey games on the weekends. So I wanted to be there very present. So I was pretty intentional about having a lifestyle practice. And then it was about 4 or 5 years ago where the mindset really started to shift and change for me and for my business, because I really wanted to grow. My kids were starting to get out of the house. My older son went to college. My younger son went to boarding school. So it was a different season of life at that point, empty nester, a lot more time. And since we've started really this intentionality behind growing the business, I've really focused on untethering myself over that period of time as well. So I think that that's kind of the approach I took, and that worked for me. I would say that knowing what I know now, right, which I didn't know when I first started, I
Yeah.
probably would have taken some of the pieces that I've implemented in the last several years and started implementing those early on. I might have still had a lifestyle type practice, but I may have taken a different approach in some regards to, make sure that some of these I's were dotted and T's were crossed to make it a smoother transition when I made that change.
Absolutely. Wow, good learning opportunities for sure. And part of it, right? It's part of the journey when we kind of learn those things through going through it and experiencing it for ourselves and the mistakes, turning those into opportunities, that growth mindset. So, what role does the company culture play and has played for your business and with Mitlin Financial, enabling the business to thrive independently of you as the founder and as a leader and among your leadership team? How have you cultivated this culture?
Yeah, so I mean, my view is culture is everything, and you have to hire for culture, you have to talk about culture, you have to uh, exemplify culture. I think it's very, very important if you want to attract the right people, whether those are people who are going to be stakeholders in the business, helping you grow it and helping the families you serve, or from a standpoint of serving those families as well. Culture is really important. And that's something that we make all our decisions around and by, is the culture. As we hire, we want to make sure that the new potential stakeholder is going to be additive to the culture and not somebody who's going to, break it down. And I heard somebody, and I don't recall who he was, but he was a culture expert, and he talked about,
Mm.
you got to build like a 300-foot wall around the culture of your firm and be very protective of that, and never
Mm.
open up a door that you're not sure who's on the other side.
Yeah.
And it is that important. And so we've created, as a team, we've created core values. There's
Hmm.
something that we take very seriously. It's not something that we just have printed out or hung up on a wall. It's something
Hmm.
that we talk about all the time. Every week in our level 10 meeting, we have
Hmm.
somebody that goes through our core values, recites them.
Wow.
Number two, as a team, we then ask for any examples from the preceding week that exemplify our core values. So one of our core values, for example, is being charitable. So right now, actually, today as we speak, we started a book drive with the book fairies, and our stakeholders are bringing in books from their own homes talking to the families we serve about if they have books at home that are gently used that they no longer need or use, they can drop them off at our office, and we set up a collection site, and each of the team members
Oh,
has a separate role with regard to this project. And that's just one small example of our core values.
I love that. Yeah, way to exemplify that and use it as an example among the team outside of the day-to-day of work as well. There's so many ways to incorporate those values and instill those as a team, showing up every day together to make an impact outside of really the day-to-day and the work and how you're serving clients and really taking it above and beyond. I love that. I love that. So with Mitlin Financial specifically, what strategies have you found the most effective shifting from being hands-on and operating to a visionary leader and focused more so on the long-term growth and sustainability?
Yeah, I think the most important parts are, sharing that vision and not just having it in your own head. It's something that not only
Mm-hmm.
you have to be aware of what the goals and objectives are of the business,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to share it. And you have to share it constantly, because
Yeah.
if you don't, people have a tendency to forget. And you have to build your goals around that. And it's just really constant reinforcement, making sure that the processes and procedures are in place, they're
Mm-hmm.
getting updated, and making sure that the team is taking care of those. And I would say, and I was talking to one of my coaches the other day about this. I feel like when I'm out of the office, many times many of the stakeholders know exactly what they need to do and just take care of it. And sometimes when I'm in the office, they second guess themselves and are asking me, and I'm like, you know how to do this. You know what the proper outcome is. Go take
Mm-hmm.
care of it, and I trust that the outcome will be what we expect and want. So it's just
Mm.
a lot of reinforcement around that to empower people, because I feel like a lot of folks, period, are not necessarily in those types of environments where they have that empowerment in other locations, and
Mm-hmm.
they're not used to being empowered in that way. So
Right.
we have to consistently reinforce that for them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Can you discuss the importance then of self-awareness in your own personal development through this journey, untethering yourself and the awareness that took and continually takes to know when to let go more or trust or, when you're tending to take
Always.
something back? Yeah.
It's always. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a constant learning curve, right? And I think as
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs and as leaders, if you're not educating, learning, reading,
Mm-hmm.
and really, honing in on your craft, sharpening that axe, so to speak, then you're not doing what the business needs and deserves. So it's
Mm-hmm.
something that we're constantly working on. And I try to ask myself when I'm doing something, or before I start doing it, I'm like, should I be doing this? Am I the right person for this? Because in
Mm-hmm.
many cases I may not be. I may be
Yeah.
just doing it to do it. But I try to take a second or two and say, okay, is this
Mm-hmm.
something I need to do? And if
Right.
not, then sit back and think who on the team would be better suited, perhaps, if it wasn't me. So it's a constant iterative process, and we always have to look internally and constantly
Yeah.
learn and get better with regard to this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what better way to model that as well among leadership teams than, showing that as an example and representing that first.
Agreed.
What would you typically say to business owners, kind of going back to this mindset and planting this seed for a business owner, regardless of their intent to exit, regardless of, any sort of event or that trigger that we typically refer to, just as a means of incorporating exit strategy and value building to run a healthier business, to have a business that you enjoy being a part of and growing, and that the team enjoys. What do you say typically to kind of help plant that seed if somebody hasn't even really thought of it, or their thought of exit planning is a far future distant event that they don't need to spend the time and the energy on yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think it's an automatic. I think it's something that we all have to consider because, again, we
Hmm.
all have these plans, we all have these goals and objectives, and if everything plays out the way we want and we do it the right way, it may very well work out that way. But what happens if
Hmm.
there's one of those events, a life event, a health event, that now
Hmm.
you have to step away from the business? I think it's you have to kind of lay out these different scenarios and say, you know, if this were to happen, how would the business run or would it end? So I think just having that mindset and understanding that you're building this for somebody else in the future to potentially take over, and it may
Right.
be very well under your control and your guidance on that shift from you to them, but there are
Hmm.
also events that could take place in our lives that may cause the business to have to shift earlier than we expected, have our family shift it. And then, I think most people want to maximize the most value out of the business that they possibly can. So
Hmm.
I think the ways to do that is to start with that mindset of, just not being in the business, working on the business and growing it strategically
Right.
for some type of exit down the road. And I think it puts you in a different mindset on how you approach the day to day and how you actually are going to approach growing it. And I think you
Hmm.
will understand a little bit more and better and sooner probably, why you want to untether yourself, from the business and kind of not have it just fully reliant on you and have
Right.
your team as understanding what their roles are and having everything
Hmm.
documented, those processes and procedures.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. Do you all track specific measurables in the scorecard too on value building as a team outside of the financial picture and that tangible asset value, but anything in the intangibles across the other capitals in the business, like social capital, customer capital, and incorporating that is has that been something that you've incorporated in your planning and strategic approach?
Yeah, so I mean, I think everybody, for the most part, everybody has 3 to 4 rocks, usually a quarter. We
Mm-hmm.
encourage people to include one personal rock that may be personal to them, whether it's health related, exercise related, a
Mm.
personal goal,
Yeah.
because we think those are very important for them to stay focused on those as well. Because everybody has their own goals outside of the business themselves. But I think for the most part, if you look at um, our scorecard, the way it's kind of set up and the deliverables we have, it tracks not only financial metrics, but it also tracks engagement and how we're helping families. So there are some of
Yeah.
those intangible and what I would say soft, non-financial aspects that are being tracked through our scorecard as well.
Great. Yeah, so important. It's so important to get that full picture because a lot of business owners as well may not realize that a good portion of the value and the estimated asset value, enterprise value in the business is in addition to what the finances say, what the outcomes of the
Oh,
financial performance entail.
yeah, I mean, I honestly, the health of our business is only as healthy as the families we serve.
Hmm.
As long as they feel like they're healthy and their financial situation and us working together is a healthy environment for them and
Yeah.
helpful, we're only as
Hmm.
strong or as beneficial as they believe that to be and the value that they see in that.
Absolutely. Yes. So, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs who are struggling to let go, to trust their teams, and to take on more responsibility
Yeah.
without compromising their vision?
I think what I'm going to say is easier said than done because I've been there and through it.
Yeah.
But you have to start letting go. It's vitally important that you
Hmm.
start, and it doesn't have to mean turning over everything tomorrow, but take a shot, turn over little pieces, see how it goes, and
Hmm.
kind of make that change. And I'll share with you a personal anecdote to kind of exemplify how I've approached it. In terms of the families we serve, some cases we're serving second and third generations of families, and
Yeah.
which is amazing. And, we brought in another advisor who's been with us several years, and he got to a point where I felt like he could be the lead point of contact. And I wanted to start turning over some relationships to him. And, I was hesitant at first. And what we did was we did like 10 relationships at first, and we saw how that went. And I
Mm,
started realizing that a lot of these families were more comfortable talking to him. They felt as comfortable. It was up here that I didn't feel that way. So we started moving
mm,
more and more relationships. So the point is, we build up these stories in our own head, and I think many times the business, our clients, in our case, the families we serve, may be better off with us kind of taking this approach and having somebody else take the lead on certain these areas. And we kind of try to convince ourselves that we're the only ones that can do it, and that's far
yeah.
from it. You just got to
Mm-hmm.
do it and start making those changes incrementally and set up a plan that's in line with your vision that allows you to start, uh, you know, focusing on your unique ability, what
Yeah.
brings you joy from the business, and focusing on those areas, and then finding what the rest of your team where they derive joy, and getting their skill sets to line up with that, and have them take over those areas of the business that you may not find joy in, but they do.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes. So key. Well, thank you so much, Larry. To learn more about our guest, Larry, and the incredible work of the team at Mitlin Financial, that's Mitlin Financial, you can visit their website at mitlinfinancial.com. There you'll find valuable resources, insights into financial planning, as well as the podcast, Mitlin Money Mindset. Thank you so much for being here, Larry. What a fun conversation. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jill.